In the late 1970s, moving to the late 1990s, educational institutions were seen as center of morality. It would take a parent to come to school to explain the challenges that they have with their children at home. Oftentimes, when you see a mother or father coming to school, you just raise your hand on your head and ask yourself this simple question: what did I do wrong this time before leaving the house? Did I clean the dishes? Did I not make the bed? What could be wrong that my father is coming to school? And teachers had the priority to instill morality into the minds of children. The education from the standards to the class 7 was based on holistic education. That is why at the early hours of the morning, specifically around 7 a.m., when you pass by all the schools, you will hear songs like "Courage, brothers, do not stumble." Some will tell you, "He made me to see this day. Oh, glory." When the children sing the song, the minds of morality stay in them. And they will always have a time for reflection. But this time around, within the early 2000s, right up to where we are today, there is a decline in what we see as morality. Parents refuse their kids to be trained in school. Parents don't even have the time to come and complain about the attitude of their kids at home. Parents even find it difficult for the school to reprimand or sanction their children. Like in West Region in 2020, a father stormed a school and got a teacher well beaten for disciplining the child. We have seen obscene videos, sex videos, some with same sex in schools of recent, and with the most recent one that was yesterday in Betwa, with that was within a secondary school. We've seen how children within our secondary schools are playing with the context of sex. The problem that we are facing is coming from a lot of areas, that is, from the cultural, from the economic, and from the social perspective. How and what did we get it wrong? Today's edition of our program, House of Commons, we are looking at moral decadence in our schools, what has gone wrong, and what can be done to salvage it. This is House of Commons with me, Tamai Jarvis. You're welcome back. Joining us is Barrister Ewule, Senior Barrister Ewule Edward, someone who's been working hard as far as the legal fee is concerned, and is viewed as one of the lawyers handling controversial issues in terms of right violations, regardless of whoever is the perpetrator. Barrister Ewule, you're welcome to the program. A privilege to have you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. It's always a pleasure for me to be here. I'm happy to be here, and the topic that you have just raised is very crucial, and it's important that we touch on those things. I'm very happy to be here this morning.
Equally we have Mr. Diwum Emmanuel. Thanks for joining us. You are a teacher.
Yes, I'm a teacher, and of course the topic fell squarely into my box of profession. I want to greet my fellow panelists and the million viewers of this prestigious program, House of Commons. Today, we have another topic that we shall be edifying many issues as far as moral decadence in our institutions is concerned.
Thank you very much. Also here in the studio, we have Professor Mark Akumbom. Professor Mark, a privilege to have you.
Thank you, Jarvis, for the opportunity. It's always a privilege being here. I want to say good morning, or is it afternoon already, to my fellow panelists and to the million viewers out there watching at us this morning. I think this is another day for education. I believe whatever we'll be discussing here will be our opinions, as well as we'll be looking for every way possible to enlighten as many as we can. Thank you.
And also Mr. May Enes. Mr. May Enes, you're welcome. A privilege to have you.
Thank you, Jarvis. It's a privilege to be on this program. I want to seize the opportunity to send a shout out to our faithful viewers of the program House of Commons. I would like to remind us that COVID-19 is still out there and is still creating its impact among us. This is the first time that I've received up to 3 close relatives that were tested positive COVID, and it is real, and the symptoms described have been observed in them. So I will encourage each and every one of us to respect the barrier measures that have been put in place by the state so that we can be able to get over this COVID stuff.
Thank you very much. Here is the principal of Somerset Bilingual Comprehensive College, so we call in Moliko Boya, Mr. Winding Rudolph. He's been within the educational family for long and understands the intricacy of moral decadence and equally the manning the school, and so understand how Somerset runs in terms of ensuring morality, since you are hearing the word Somerset College. Mr. Winding Rudolph, a privilege to have you here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jarvis, and my co-panelist. I think it's a it's a privilege for me to be here on behalf of my darling institution. I think I do salute the fact that a school like mine was really invited as a case study, because that's really the action ground where we receive maybe all what the other stakeholders might really have as far as this topic is concerned. It's a very, very sensitive one, and I like maybe the composition of the panel. We'll be able to give our own little bit of input so that at the end of it all what we need is change. No matter that aspect of decadence, we should brainstorm to see how we bring back maybe those old values that we had. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Winding. I'll begin with you. Within the late 70s to the late 90s, there was high level of morality, but standards are falling. You have been in the educational sector for long. What's happening?
Yeah, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity again. You know, there is one point that in life, as you easily quoted, during that particular period, you discovered that education was really holistic. Holistic in the sense that education actually plays a lot of values, that moral aspect on maybe the student. It was not just a matter of what academics. But later on, if you look at it keenly, you discover that values dropped. There are certain basic values that grew us up. There are certain basic tenets that for each student, no matter what happened, if you were called a student, there were some natural tendencies or values that students kept before that particular period. Values like obedience, humility, respect, honesty, patience, love, self-discipline, and that aspect of apprenticeship. Apprenticeship is that aspect where we grew up, children grew up, and they were imitators of first their parents as the first stakeholders. Coming to school again, they were also, imitators of maybe the experience that their parents had. And all of us sitting here, our parents, they really harnessed all these values. But now, I think our problem, our concern is later on what happened. And that is the question. Later on what happened? These values dropped. And maybe we are here to trace some of those causes, and in one way or the other you discover that later on we started talking about globalization. We started having the internet, then social media, and so on. It's like the greater students or maybe children became open to maybe the greater world, because we are not condemning globalization. But you finally discover that with the advent of globalization, certain strange aspects now started coming in. So you see, it is at that point, and as things went on, you discover that these values started dropping bit by bit by bit. So I think for a start, if you want to, let me say, look at the remote courses, you discover that globalization brought in so many aspects that actually deviated now the attention of these values from children who grew up first from their families, now coming to school and so on. They never cherished these values that came from their homes, and even in our own African society as a whole. That is where the problem actually started.
Okay, Mr. Ndimu Emmanuel, where are we missing things here within the aspect of moral decadence in Cameroon? We've seen that it's peculiar within the 8 regions, sex videos coming in left and right every day, and even yesterday we had one from Betua. You're a teacher. I want to get this context. What's happening in the schools?
What is happening in the schools is that we have moral decadence, if you want me to answer you. So let me answer you that. Now, after answering you, I want to tell you that a teacher, by definition, in the Spanish language, they call a teacher a loco parentis. Loco parentis means once you are a teacher, you are a father to every child that you meet on the way. And that is how us who grew up in the Anglo-Saxon education culture were taught. I will not be very biased for those who understand my language very well to say that these videos are very rampant. We are in a country made up of 10 regions, but this video and the academic violence in the academic, the violence in the academic milieu is taking lead in the French region of Cameroon. You see, I want to put a finger on something. Everything has an originality. When I was growing up, I used to know that when they put a note on the board, because in those days computers were not very common, for us to copy that our parents were invited to school, that was in the name of PTA, you started asking yourselves, shall daddy come back tomorrow and I sleep safe? You start thinking of the I's and the T's that you were not cutting and writing within the week. I also want to think of, I want to buy the idea of the principle of globalization, because it is this globalization that teaches us that corporal punishment has to disappear, and we grow up with the instruction of the cane, and we are in Africa, and when corporal punishment disappeared, the cane was to drop completely, and as it was dropping, there was a philosophy of child's rights, which is teaching the child that you have the right to violence because you will be protected by the law. And it's a shared responsibility here, because in the academic sector we have 3 partners. We have the parents, and that is where the education of the child begins. That is from home, which is non-formal. We have the teacher, who is at the center, because he shuffles between the parent and the state. And now we have the third partner, which is the state. And I think to better dilute this topic, we have to look at the role of the teacher, the role of the parent, and the role of the state. I want to start by pointing out the role of the state. The role of the state is to make out rules that guide the education sector. But quite often than not, you will bear with me that for those who have been to the teacher trainings, there's what we call sociology of education. And in that sociology of education, we have the bourgeoisie's principle, which is stratified. And in these stratas, you find the common man's child in the same school, and you have the big man's child in the same school, but they are not treated the same. Why? Because if I know that my father can come and ask my teacher to kneel down, if that teacher punishes me, I will go ahead to insult that teacher. We have seen cases where a commander has asked a teacher in a final duel to kneel down as a sign of apology to a student, which of course that's teachers have been treated with a lot of zabanism of late. And let me point it out that this academic violence in academic milieux are found that so much alarming in the situation of Cameroon than other countries. If you make a study, a comparative education study, that was one. I'll be coming back to it. Now let's look at the role of the parents. The tutelage, the guardianship that parents had at first for their children has completely disappeared. Some will tell you that our economy is difficult, we cannot share ourselves to follow up the children, follow up what the children will eat, follow up what will make of the family. But that is no. Okay. The third, I said it was, we have to start from these three principles. Now, the role of the teacher now. The teacher is looked upon as the light, as the know-all in the society. But unfortunately, we are found in a situation where the teacher's hands are tied. Because knowing the situation of and the happenings and the kind of country in where we found ourselves in, the teacher has been reduced to a tissue paper, to the level where a common policeman on the way with a first school living has a right to torture, question, and even beat up a teacher. So a teacher is not that the teacher has forgotten his role, is that the teacher is merely being afraid to execute his role the way it would have been done.
Professor Mark, you are a parent and you are someone who is within the higher educational institution. You understand some of these intricacies. What we explain the numerous sex videos we see within the our schools these days. In your days, it was very difficult to look at these. When you finish, I'll come to Barrister to look at some of the issues, because Barrister too has been the senior prefect of Bilingual Grammar School, I think that was in 2008, 2009 or so, and now he understands too some of those issues. But let me start with you as a parent.
Okay, before I actually go to talk about being myself a parent, you see, when we were students back in the 80s and 90s, there is a lot of in fact, there's a very big disparity that exists between that time and this time. Very big, that you get to start asking questions, what actually happened. But I'm sure that is why we are here, to discuss on that. As a parent, I would say one of the greatest limitations of parents today is the fact that we have allowed Western influence so much to affect the culture of our homes. I'm talking from a Pan-African position. In Africa, we believe that it takes a village to raise a child, which means every child born is a community's child, is the community's child. When I, a parent, have a child, it is obvious that the next person close to me takes care of that child equally the same way I would take. That was in the past, because I'm no more seeing that now. And with that African mindset of it takes a village to raise a child, there are values which every home make sure they inculcated, because they know you are going to interact with the community. And if you have to interact with the community, you must express strong values. Values that makes the people respect your family. And today, because of the whole idea of economic influence, let me put it that way, where today we feel like our farms have lost their values, we need to have businesses in the market before we can live. Let me go back to that point. My mother, even though she was a teacher in her time, but she used to make sure she takes care of her children at home, in school, and back at home. My father had a responsibility of leaving the home in the morning to fend for the family. She categorically told our mother, you do not have the right to allow these children and go to teach. So they had a problem there. But she said, okay, I'll be able to manage it. So my children will go to the school where I'm teaching. Though all of us finally could not go to the school where she was teaching because she finally dropped out and stayed to take care of children. So with that kind of home, where mother is looked upon as a manager of the home, while the father is the one who defends the economic basket of the home, there was division of labor. The mother had her responsibilities and the father had his responsibilities. Today it is different in that children grow themselves. How do they grow themselves? Mommy leaves in the morning, she's gone. Daddy leaves in the morning, he's gone. Children need to make sure
house helps.
A house help is the worst partner in growing children. And at the end of the day, you discover that strange attitudes get into the family. I'm starting from that. Those values that strengthens the African background disappears. He used an example about the Anglo-Saxon and the Francophone cultural background from where we have these problems coming from. I will say this: the reason why the Anglo-Saxon in quotes seems to be strong is because when the Englishman came to Africa, precisely in Cameroon, he never actually interfered in our homes.
It was the point of indirect
rule. Our foreign chiefs and fonts were still there, respected, and the culture and tradition was still much respected. But when it came to the Francophones,
which was a
direct rule where the Frenchman was involved in your home. And so they made sure they destroyed the African cultures that were found in these homes. So I will tell you, what you are seeing today on videos is not today, it had been long ago in French section.
So it was just a lack of the social media
to expose it. Yes.
The issues.
Because the French people came to Africa to assimilate.
Because they had a policy of indirect rule which was based on indirect rule that was based on assimilation, indigenous nationalism,
can you bring me talk? They were out to assimilate these people and make them to become French people in Africa. So they need to kill and destroy your culture, eliminate it totally. And to an extent they succeeded. If you go to France, you understand what I'm saying. They do not have a culture. They do not have values that you can hold. So since they do not have, they have destroyed that of Africans. And it is normal to see a young child insult the father at home. I'm not yet going to school. You hear the way children talk to their parents. You start asking questions. Is this a child or the mother or father's maid? It is because first, in their homes, there is no value. There are no values. And as long as values are not inculcated into the children, you do not expect that the teacher should do the work of the father, should do the work of the parents. It is the responsibility of parents to first of all inculcate those basic values that permit a child to honor and respect one another. Respect comes from home. It's not coming from school. That value is something that's inculcated into in the home.
Okay, Professor.
So when that is lacking, when that child appears in front of a teacher in school, there is just one thing that the child knows: arrogance. So she expresses or he expresses that.
Professor,
and I've been experiencing that for a while.
We'll be coming back to you, Professor Mark. Mr. Mayor Ernest, you are a civil society advocate. I think you moved to the other regions of Cameroon. You just recently just back from the north region of the country where you freedness. Do we have similar situation or tendencies, and what could account for this from the societal point of view?
Yeah, Jarvis, before I will dive into answering that question, I would like to make our people to understand what are morals. They are the standards of behavior set by any society. You know, this behavior is designed to put the society to be running smoothly. Then, when we talk of moral decadence, it is that deviation in not observing that standard behavior imposed by society. Let us take the example of the Yorubas in Nigeria. When you meet an elder, you prostrate before the elder to show your sign of respect. We have the Mbororos that are in some part of Cameroon, the northwest, the west. When they meet an elder, they have to squat before the elder before greeting that elder. In my tradition, to greet an elder, you have to support your right hand with your left hand before greeting the elder.
Yeah.
In other cultures, there are other things accepted. In Europe, greeting somebody and looking away is considered as a sign of non-sincerity. But with the Baka picnics of Cameroon, looking someone into the eyes is disrespect. So, in our African context, we will look at what is moral, what has been accepted by the society. Now, talking about going across this nation, it is not the same everywhere, but it all boils down to making life in society livable. Today in Cameroon, we have seen a deviation from the standard that have been set. Let me say, in the northern regions of Cameroon, where I'm coming in, where Islam has had a very great influence, they still train their children following the Quranic standards, where children go to these Islamic training schools and they are subjected to, there is some form of military training there, and the child, when the child comes out from that school, the child understands how to respect and follow others in the society. Let me tell you, the Islamic schools function quite differently from what our schools function. And there, I don't believe the state has a hand in it, because if you see what these children undergo in these schools, you will say, we don't train our children. That is why they are able to follow others. Now, what we see, like my brother in the room said, is that we have three partners that have to collaborate in training a child. We have the parent at home, we have the society at large, and the teacher. Now we'll look at the responsibility of each and every one of these partners in bringing up the child. Like my co-panelist, Professor McAntony has said, value starts from home. They are inculcated. What I would like to state here is that children at their very tender age, they only mimic what the parents do. Most parents are disconnected from their children from the various reasons raised by our co-panelists. You know that life has been reduced into material things, where we think, if I don't possess material wealth, I don't have anything. So anything about life is not material. So parents now abandon their children at home to themselves and go out to look for material things. I often hear that I have given my child everything that he needs. Why is this child behaving the way? What is the parent talking about? He has provided the child with a gadget. He has looked for a teacher to teach the child at home. But what is lacking in that child's development at home are the moral principles. You will see in a home when a father sees a child doing something wrong, the first reaction that will come from the father is that, I've told you that we don't do this thing like this. And bet you, that is the first time he's using that word, that they don't do that thing like this. It is just coming from a reflex. The father has never sat down, or the parents have never sat down with the child to tell the child that this is how we do this thing, this is how we do this thing. But from reflex, just I've told you that you don't do this, and it comes with punishment. But instead of sitting down and telling the child, look, this is how we do something, this is how we do something, okay, we just jump into the punishment part of it. Okay,
Barrister Wule, you've been, I think, from Somerset, from Baptist, you've experienced a lot of these issues in terms of morality. I remember when you were the senior prefect of Bilingual Grammar School, you instilled order and discipline in such a way that children, when they scarlet nature of hair, decent way of dressing. I remember there was even a point in time when you punished me. I have have to be very honest. When I had a kind of funny hair, that was when you were still there. But we are witnessing something different now. Now you cannot do that within the schools. And to an extent that we are having sex videos popping up. What are we getting wrong? And what are the legal implications in case of these videos? Because they are criminal. They are breaking the school rules and regulations.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jarvis. You see, like what the other co-panelists have said, it is not who to blame, but look at who bears the responsibility. And we think that the responsibility will touch on these three very important aspects, three important pillars as far as children are concerned. You look at the parents, you look at the teacher, and you look at the government. And the other panelists have spoken so much on the role that the parents have to play, but they forget to touch on the role that the government is supposed to play as far as bringing up our children in schools are concerned. We have to start by a principal of Somerset is here. You will see that in most of the mission schools, you see that the moral values are very high. Because why? Religious studies, that was, we are not saying that, because if you look at the Bible and religious study, you see that it has some morals that it brings out in the children. And you see in our schools nowadays, most religious studies, it's out of the syllabus. And if you have religious studies and one other paper, you might not be admitted in the university. So if religious studies could be brought back to our schools, it will have a lot to do with the morals of the children. I might know that there are many people who are not Christians, they will say, but I think that religious studies has a lot to do. Secondly, the former Minister of Secondary Education, Louis Mbapes, may soul rest in peace, he came up and banned the use of cell phones in secondary schools. But I don't know, with the coming of the last minister, who is now in Jean-Enes Ngale, and now we have Nalova Lunga, we have seen that phones now, you see phones in schools, children use phones to snap, and that is one of the problems.
They will tell you that we are talking about online learning. Huh?
Yes, online learning, but I'm saying that in those days, phones were being banned in schools. That is, during classes, you don't have phones. Secondly, the government has a lot to play. Now, with the use of, with the drugs of tramadol and the rest, you see most of the government must see that most of these drugs are banned from entering into our country. Now you go, now tramadol, now you go, they now make it in the form of sweet or chewing gums. So and then you have a lion door and the rest. You see most of these children going to stores to buy this whiskey, sachet whiskey, and most of the store owners sell it to them. So we think that our government has a lot to play in those areas. In last year, 2020, the then Minister of Secondary Education called for proposals to see how could better morals in our schools when a teacher was stabbed in Yaoundé. But you see that nothing has been done. We are not still seeing the changes. Since after the teacher that was stabbed in Yaoundé, we are still seeing the occurrence of this moral decadence in our schools.
Constant attack from student to student.
And what happened was we see how a student in one of the schools in I think in Betwa or in San Marima went and reported to the father who was a commissioner and said that the teacher has spoken something about the Anglophone crisis, and the teacher was being arrested in school. And so what do you tell the students, that if my father is a minister or is a commissioner, if the teacher does something wrong, I can call my father to reprimand the teacher. So these are some of the things that should be done.
But legally, I want you to look at this issue now from the legal perspective. Is it legal that an officer of law will get into a school and get a teacher well beaten, and that officer is not charged? And even if when he's charged, there's a lighter issues. Where is it not an aggravating circumstance with the children to see and notice that they have the impunity?
Yeah.
Like in West Region, I remember when a female teacher was beaten and she collapsed.
Yeah, but that is the problem. You cannot get into a school, you a military man. There must be a procedure before you go to that school. A military man, you have nothing to do in school. Law and order is supposed to be handled by the police. And if you want to go to a school, or if there's a search warrant or a warrant of arrest, it must be sanctioned by the state council or even the Procureur General. You are now, the law is very clear. You cannot go into a school without having a police officer or a gendarme officer. It's trespass in most of the time, and that is why we see that there's a lot of impunity when it comes to our forces of law and order and even the military. You, a military man, what do you have to do in a school? If anything has to be done there, it has to be, there's a procedure. The right to the principal of the school invites maybe the teacher, and if there's a warrant of arrest or something that has to be done, it has to follow that procedure. So if you, a military man, you think that you can take the laws into your hands, then the law is supposed to take its course. So that is it is an aberration that you see. You see that a military man or a police officer gets into a school and have a teacher beaten.
So the impunity.
No, the police officer could be prosecuted for assault. But you know, in our country, and this is what we are crying every day now, in our country.
I know we have other members, but I just want to look at this issue from a legal perspective. The constant sex videos that comes out from these schools, can these children not be persecuted legally?
Yes, you have
dismiss them?
But there are two arms of it. You have the first arm, you have what is known as public indecency. Public indecency is being punished under our penal code. But now, you know that since most of them are minors, the procedure will be a little bit different if it was a major. Then you have public indecency with a minor. That is if for instance a teacher goes around and he's dating a student who is less than 16 years, whether the student accepts or the student does not accept, that teacher, if he goes with sex, the teacher or the person will be punished for imprisonment term from 10 years and above, because it's a felony. Then you have what is known as corruption of youth less than 18 years. That is, if that happens. But now you see that the law protects the woman more, because the girl child is more vulnerable. So those children can be prosecuted for public indecency. We had the case of the People versus Divine CEO Kafor. He was prosecuted in the court of first instance, Boya, for public indecency.
Okay.
So those students can be prosecuted, but we think that the school should first of all take its responsibility to discipline the children, either by suspending them or dismissing them or reprimanding them.
Okay, thank you very much, Senior Counsel Vice Wille. I wanted to also get that clarification. Now getting to the principal of Somerset Bilingual Comprehensive College. Principal, your school deals with the evening session, the morning session, and with people of different walks of life. Some are dropped out, some are not dropped out, but we don't see such issues within your school as well as we see in other schools. What possibly could be the magic, and what the helping hand can you lend to the nation to see that we reduce some of this indecency?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Jarvis. I think before going to that point, I just want to add to what my fellow panelists have said. I think we have identified the various stakeholders, and if you look at it keenly or practically, you discover that the various stakeholders in one way or the other, they might have failed in their responsibilities now to bring up the children in one way or the other. But as far as these three main stakeholders are concerned, my pin is on the parents more, and followed by our schools, specifically the teachers. Now, the reason why I'm saying so is simply because the society as a whole receives the children. The school specifically also receives the children. The children come all the way from a home. So which therefore means, as Prof rightly said at the beginning, the educational process begins squarely at home. And you discover that when we went back during the 70s, when we had these values, the values that came from the aspect that our parents in those days, they had that fear of God. And when we talk of values, these values, they come from somewhere. There is a source, which is the Bible. And our parents were able to bring up the children with that fear, and they inculcated all these values to them. But you finally discover that as time went on with this globalization and so on, deviant attitudes now they came in, and the children never saw the need again of maybe sticking to some of those values.
Globalization.
We are not blaming globalization. Is that right? We are not blaming globalization. It's good, but here I'm saying
I don't see globalization affecting your school in any way.
No. I'm coming to that. It is. We do receive the children. Is that right? But these children have already had these deviant attitudes coming in. So now, what I just wanted to point out is the fact that parents should understand that they really have the greatest blame, because from the onset, they were supposed to inculcate these values before the society receives them, either at the level of the school or the community. Now, getting to my own specific case, that's Somerset Bilingual College, we are already aware of the prevailing situation. And that is the reason why one of the solutions, one of those solutions that we do put in place is just the simple aspect of what counseling. You know, if there is that drop of those values, we are conscious in Somerset Bilingual College with the highly reputed teachers with good experience and so on. We are conscious of this, and we always make sure that we do something to bring the students back to the former situation. So we embark a lot on counseling.
Okay.
We don't have that situation where, you know, if a child, for example, a student does something wrong, the first thing is trying to see how you dismiss the child in one way or the other. We bring the children down, or the student, we counsel, we talk to them, and let them realize they're wrong. And from there, we can now start trying to see how we can maybe reform or bring them back now with this repeated, motivation on maybe the good moral standing. So we embark mostly on counseling. And again, in Somerset Bilingual College, we make sure that we confine the students. It's a lay private institution, no doubt. It's not like a conventional school, as a barrister said. But since we are conscious of this, we make sure that we keep the students within our environment for the 8 hours that we have with them. And the teaching and learning process, discipline again, there is that constant follow-up. And you know, even with this advent of this our armed crisis in one or the other, we decided to increase the human resource as far as the discipline department is concerned, presently I have 5, young teachers who do take care as far as discipline is concerned from minute to minute. So they go around. First of all, my campus is not even all that big as compared to.
So we have to start reducing the campus sizes.
No, I'm not saying so. The resources. We need to increase the human resources. Because that's one thing. If we want to go back to blame the government, on the other part, as he rightly said, you discover that the personnels are not even there as compared to
how they used to be.
The number of students in the school. If you take, for example, there are other institutions with about 5,000, 2,000,
and you have just 10 discipline masters.
And you have just 10 discipline masters. It is practically impossible for you to follow up these students minute by
we're coming
minute.
Back to you. Let's get into the womb. But before then, government have separated many couples by transferring or posting husbands away from their wives. This affects child upbringing. I am in town with my 3-year-old daughter while my wife is in the bush. Happy Sunday to you all in the studio. I just want to make this contribution about what one of your panelists just said, which is wrong. How can a common policeman of first school living certificate beat a teacher? That is the reason why we never grow as African. In every nation in the world, police are respected because they are there to protect us. We all understand in every occupation there are bad eggs. If you sit on TV and call police officer common, the same way policeman somewhere will sit in and call a teacher common, we have to give respect. This is coming from. I love the program. Edin watching from Halflex in Canada, and this other one it says good afternoon, nice program. Please wait, send us an SMS, tell us where you are participating so we can properly acknowledge you. This other one it says good afternoon, you are in the studio. The youth nowadays have let their schooling to interfere with their education. Parents have failed in their aspect to educate their children. The teacher cannot play both role of the parent and a teacher at the same time. Buzi Vincent from Quen in Bamenda. Nice program. Keep it up. Thank you. Diwum, I know we have about 45 minutes to go. Let's look at this aspect of increasing human personnel. Could human personnel be one of the reasons why we have this falling standard of moral decadence? Because I remember when you see your father in school in the late 90s, early 90s, you feel like you have done something wrong. Even when he's coming to pay the school fees, you start trembling, you start feeling like parents, when you do something wrong at home, your father will tell you, I will take you to your teacher, and you start begging, you start panicking. But this time it's a reverse. Instead, the child will tell you, I'll go and report you to my father.
And that is when even our parents themselves were still respecting the values of life. And of course, you will bear with me that today we have elders that when they speak in public, they poison the minds of the kids rather. We have even top-ranking officials in our country that preaches moral decadence in public by their words, what they say in public. I know what we say in public is consumable at a very large rate, so we should not forget that. So that is why we used to panic in those days. That said, I want to tell you that when we grew up, I want to come back to the point of the PTA meeting in school, which used to be very important, of which I doubt if today is still functioning. What was let me define the objective of the PTA. The PTA meeting in those days was a meeting point of parent and the teacher to evaluate, to assess the conduct of the children in school. And after the meetings, if you came back that day and you were not trashed, it means that something never came up in a meeting concerning your conduct in school.
So when your parents are going for PTA meeting,
we don't have time. Let me write up, please. You see, if you came home that day and you were not trashed, you went to bed smiling even if you are asleep. Let's look again what used to be called in the secondary school the disciplinary councils. What was the use of the disciplinary council? I bet you today we no longer have disciplinary council, but we have crisis councils. We have waited until when teachers are murdered before we hold crisis councils. It has all disappeared. Our company, that is, and when you still look again, when you go to schools today, you look at the dressing code of the children. Female children wear skirts right up to the laps here. There are those who shave what they call cock. There are those who go to school with combs. After every 1 hour, they style their hair in class. It's just that the time for the program is so short for us to go into the nitty-gritties of what is the brain behind this moral decadence. Like I said from the onset, it's a shared responsibility. The parents have failed because PTA does no longer exist for them to diagnose the conduct of their children back in school. The government has failed woefully. They even carry the lion's share of the failure, because when a teacher is killed, a minister comes out and says this teacher was not killed in a station where the government posted him, which is very wrong. And since then till date, nothing has been done. We have not heard that the government has taken a measure, a court of measure that can protect the teachers or that can protect the institution. If that was done, you will know that a parent can be called to book if the child exercise a kind of bad attitude in school, that the parent will answer for it, and I bet you parents will sit up. If that is not done, we will keep seeing what is going on every day. Now, talking about sex videos, we have watched honorable professors in this country sat on television and say their political colleagues are having sex in school with children and they have the videos. I want to think that when we are talking about morality, morality should not be reduced only to the children, to the school learning children. Morality should be a standard value that must be respected, practiced by he who is 1 year up to he who is 100 plus. We should not limit it just to the school going kids, because it's a give and take. It's not a one-way street. It's a give and take. I take some elderly people and I take this chance to greet Honorable Jim Abewanger in Fundong, who is watching, because he has been my mentor and there are some values that I learned from him. So when we are looking up to the elders, we are looking because we need to learn from them good values. Okay. And the dressing of our children before they leave the house to the school, parents, it comes back to us. You see children going to school with destroyed trousers, half trousers, 2 dresses. So it's really unfortunate that the time of the program does not permit us to actually edify people on.
But I'm sure subsequently the management will look into the timing.
That's what we are begging for.
We can have at least 2 hours of, but we still have at least 35 minutes because we started a bit.
Then talk less and give time to the
no, I determine what to say. I know. So I determine time to be So Professor Akumong, we are looking at now a different context. They both say the government has a great responsibility to play. But don't you think that the schools need to step up their disciplinary council serious, and equally the PTA meetings need to be more of the PTA than financial issues to be discussed, as has been the case?
That would be very good, but looking at the situation in which we have in Cameroon, there is a problem. We have a nation where individuals are focused in siphoning money that is meant for institutions into their personal bank accounts and pockets. And when we need teachers, we need personnel in schools, we don't have them. Do you know how many schools exist in Cameroon without teachers? Do you know how many schools that do exist without human resources? There are many. I'm talking precisely the government schools here. When you go to most of these government schools, a government school, let's say about 5,000 people, let's look at Crise, where of recent there was a situation that happened there. Do you know that the disciplinary master who is supposed to be sitting in his office and then making sure he goes around the school to check is having classes he's teaching because they lack teachers? And as long as he is in the class teaching, he cannot do his job. What he was supposed to be doing is not doing. He's doing the job of a teacher, but he is supposed to be a disciplinary master of the school. And so in that case, as a surveyor general, what will he do? You can't blame him for the morals of that child because the government didn't make sure that he should do his job. The government didn't send enough teachers into the school. So we are simply saying that the government has failed awfully in making sure that our school institutions become learning institutions. They, in one way or the other, I'll also say this. Cameroon is one of those nations where teachers have been brought down to nothing. The salary of teachers in Cameroon is really pitiable. You pity it. You should be able to pity that teachers in Cameroon. Don't forget, teachers are supposed to be the most respected because they are the ones that form everybody in the community. It is the function of the teacher to make sure that the community grows every day. From your nursery to the higher and even professional institutions. Who are those doing that formation? Teachers. But how do they treat them? They treat them like I heard somebody said here that
Toilet tissue.
They are, in fact, they have no value for teachers anymore.
Is it not the teachers who probably must have caused this by giving the right to the parents? Because you see, teachers, I am not looking at that. Hey, this one is a rich man killer.
I am not looking at teacher parents now. I'm looking at teacher and the government.
Okay.
It is not the parents that reduce the salary of the teacher. It is the government of Cameroon. The salary of the teacher has been cut down into two. Is that what is supposed to be done? If somebody is if there is any civil servant in Cameroon whose salary is supposed to be highest, it is not the parliamentarian. I heard somebody say, no, giving 1 million francs to a parliamentarian is too small. What about giving 100,000 to a teacher?
In some cases, the private teachers
let us not even get into private schools, my brother, because in private schools it is worse. A first grade teacher in a secondary school is earning from 70 to 100,000. How can that help you? How can that help you? So we need to, the government, if the government needs that, our institutions should be learning institutions, because now they have become I don't know, it's like they are training barbarism, they are training barbarians now in most of our institutions, because you have individuals who find people go to school weapons.
Okay, Professor.
So come back to summarize on it. In that case, Jarvis, the government has a lot of work to do in order to rectify the issue of permitting schools to function properly by being able to employ, in fact, employ more teachers, more discipline masters for institutions, and then to come. Let me say, yes, thank you. I'll be brief here. I wanted to point something in relation to the fact that most of our parents at times, they are suffering from the same position where teachers are suffering from, because they need to work extra to have money to be able to take care of their children.
Okay.
And so
the government should increase their...
I am simply saying that all those whom the government has decided to bring in as civil servants, let them give them salary that is able to make sure it deals with all
Thank
those.
you, Professor. One issue with the Cameroonian parents is that they believe more in their children, which have increased moral decadence in schools. Teachers teachers are on their own part. Teachers on their own part are failed because they try to avoid conflict from the parents. Yannick Ambe from Yaks from Boya. This one reads, it says, obviously police people have to respect they have to be respected indeed due to their experience and risks they are taking out in the name of security. For instance, teachers cannot take risks to secure the students when there is shooting of gun. Meanwhile, if was a policeman, he could do this his best. This anyway, your message is clear. May Ernest, what's the way forward?
Jarvis, before we look at the way forward, we should understand in great detail so that we should be able to we should understand in great detail what actually went wrong. You see that we have enumerated some of the reasons why the moral standard in our schools dropped. And I will say here that, you know, the world is fast becoming materialistic, and because of our mad rush for material things, we have abandoned what is very important to the human soul, the spirit. We have abandoned the personal development of the person. So now you will see that a father, a mother who leaves the house at 6 a.m. and comes back at 10 p.m. will hardly have time to control the child's work. I can remember my father, though not educated, was controlling my books. Whenever I would come back from school, he would just take the books and open to the next page and look at see if he can see what I read, but he was controlling what I was doing. And I could not cheat on my father, because if I do that, my teacher would beat me up in school. So I could not play between the two of them. Now, you see, with this mass rush of material things, we have actually abandoned the education of our children. We need actually to reconsider what is important to the human being. Is it the personal development to make the person be able to fit into the society, or is it the material provision? Let me tell you that most people who have those material provisions out there do not live the best of life we think they are living. They still have worries. One thing is that we know that corporal punishment was withdrawn as a means of correcting a child from schools and even in some homes. The reason behind this is just that we move around because of a difficult economic situation. We move around with bags of emotional challenges, and at the least opportunity we could discharge that back on a child, and without even noticing that we had acted out of proportion. So to address that situation, they had to stop corporal punishment, because it was always carried out to extremes. So, but the true thing to address in this case is not to withdraw corporal punishment, is to train the person who is administering that corporal punishment in recognizing the limit to which corporal punishment should be administered. Let me tell you, in my house I still administer corporal punishment, but before I administer that corporal punishment, we sit down and reason. That is why my parents taught me. That is what my parents taught me. When my father would want to beat me, he will put me down and ask me, "You did this?" I will say yes. "You see that it's wrong to do it?" He say yes. He say, "I will beat you today, small. When you do it again, I will double it." And he has already prepared me that I am not supposed to do that again, so that I feel the first pains and I consider the first pains small. It is a discussion. He's discussing with me, telling me why he's beating me. You don't rush to punish a child without pointing out the fault of the child.
Okay. So what if the child calls 911 now?
No, that is not in the Cameroonian context. In the Cameroonian context, we are in Africa. We still need to respect the African way of child upbringing. Like you say, you see, the Bible is African. Let me just tell you, the Bible is African. The Bible tells you, if you spare the rod, you spoil the child. So we have spared the rod and we have spoiled the child.
To help you quote it in Proverbs 10, it says there that if you in order to remove foolishness from a child,
you must use the rod of correction. Correction. So now, let me say, we need to bring back this corporal punishment, but we need to also train the teachers on how to exercise it. They need to actually be handed on how to handle their emotional baggages. It should be part of the curriculum in teacher training.
Okay. Greetings to you all in the studio. I've come to you, Barrister. Greetings to you all in the studio, especially Mr. Tayer Jarvis. I really do enjoy the principal talk. The other talk about the dismissing, no dismissing without talk. This is coming from Fali in Kumba. This other one, it says, good day to you, House of Commons. Moral decadence in school has been made worse by two actors. First, the ministry. The ministry has taken the rights of teachers and bestow on students because they copy and paste Western values. Corporal punishment helped us fear and respect teachers and kept the line. Second, parents. Parents who send their kids to school and tell them nobody has a right to lay a finger on you. How can such a child respect a teacher, knowing fully well that if you touch him, his father will come to school and beat the teacher? Bisong Sona from Gaunderi. It says most male teachers go out with female students, showing them bad morals, and the parents lack concentration on their children. It's coming from Clarita from Kribi. Senior barrister, I want to ask you this: is it legal that a child disrespects a teacher, and the teacher sues that child without laying a finger on that child?
I don't understand. Coming in.
For example, if the message you just read, it says no person has a right to lay finger on you, and you go to school, you insult that teacher as a student. You insult that teacher and you disrespect that teacher massively, and the teacher has credible evidence to show that you insulted him. And can that teacher, without laying finger on you, sue that child and the father? Because before you could beat that child, then now you cannot beat the child. And
you cannot sue the father, first of all, because they say criminal responsibility is personal. But you can sue the child if you have credible evidence. But you should know that a child from 0 to I think it's 12 years, you are not criminally liable.
So are you not promoting now?
No. I'm saying that from 0 to 12 to up to 14, you are not criminally liable. It means that if you cannot go to court and you sue the child, so it's from 14 years and above that you can be held. But they say the punishment is diminishing. You must diminish the punishment. And the point is we must understand that this issue of corporal punishment, even though the law is against it totally, but the issue of corporal punishment, I think that we still need it in our school, especially the primary and secondary school. There should be some level of corporal punishment, because for instance, Mr. Jarvis, I should give you this example. I went to CBC school Bolifamba, and we had our teacher there. They call her Madame Bela. She's still in Moliko. And Madame Bela, because in those days in my 16, we used to students used to leave class and go and play this game. I do get so when you come back, she will trash you very well, and so it made some of us to be scared of the trashing she will give us. We were not going to those game houses, and that made some of us to study, because and those of my friends who were going to those game houses, most of them are just roaming the street now in my 16. But you see that we believe that if we go to those game houses and come, Madame Bela will trash us very well. So it made us to be scared. So we need some level of corporal punishment in our school. We need guardian counseling, because to be honest with you, you go to the government schools that you have guardian counselors who have gone through teachers training. Most of them don't even come to school. To be honest with you, they don't come to school. They come to school once a week. Guardian counselor, we should have at least before you go in a big school like lycée, you have like 1 or 2 guidance counselor, and I think that is not enough. A school like lycée that you have lycée Moliko or big the lycée in Yaoundé, called this one, and lycée Tukebe, they have like 4,000 students. You have 2 guidance counselors. What can they do? So the school too should be able to see that. No, the school too should be. The government should be able to see that we have at least 5 or 6 guidance counselors, each guidance counselor in each sector. Maybe from 1 to from 3, they have 1 guidance counselor, from 3 to 4, and the Francophone section they have the. And now the guidance counselor should be able to come up with a roster of teaching these children values, civics and ethics. That is those things that should be done. But look at what happened in Yaoundé, where a government official was imposing in some schools in Yaoundé and in Sang-Malima in the south region, for instance, that in guidance counseling, in civics and ethics, they should be teaching them about the head of state speech. How would the head of state speech? To be honest, I know that the head of state speech is very important, but how would the head of state speech impact the moral value in the children? In fact, no. But Mr. Jarvis, you see, the head of state speech, most of those children in primary school will not understand the intricacies in that speech, because the head of state speech carry the policy of the nation and other issues, the infrastructure. So how will it impact on those children in primary school and even this? So these are some of you see that we miss. What is this? What can I say? You see that you displace priority.
But we don't have we don't have economic powers at the level of the school administration, the school government, like the SP. They don't have powers again.
No, but those are some of the things that should come back. Yes. We need the school government sees as student government. I was the senior prefect of Bilingual Grammar School in 2007-2008. I was also the president of the biggest faculty in the University of Boya, Faculty of Social and Management. So I understand what it means. These student government have a role to play, because I think that it is those positions that have built me up like this. So we think that something the ministry should come up to see how to, because this guidance counselor, let us see their roadmap.
Okay.
Let us see what they are going to be doing. And then these students, is that student that stabbed the teacher in Yaoundé, up till today we have not heard that student have been taken to court. We should see. No. Even yes, but no. I take serious exception to what the government spokesman said, that the teacher was not in his post. But that gives no right to anybody, whether be it the principal or even the government official, to lay a hand, because the criminal offense. We need to see that these students who practice public indecency, who stop or brutalize fellow students or teachers, let them be prosecuted.
Okay,
and let us see what they are doing.
There's no time briefly. I just want to ask you on these bigger issues. Can a parent sue such a student for public indecency? Let's say I watched the video and my children. Can I sue such a family or a child?
I don't understand. The parent itself suing the teacher.
No. I am a parent. I've seen that video, and I say, that is corrupting my own.
Most of the time, if you want to sue, you sue but the school.
Okay,
you can sue the school. But now we have a problem in our country, and that happens because in other places, Mr. Tal Jarvis could be able to take the ministry to court. Any person who is a right-taking Cameroon, now when you see that type of video, you can take, in human rights basis, you can take the school, the ministry to court. But in our country, there's something known as local standing. That what is your link? What do you have? Do you have the local standing to be able to sue? Okay. Local standing is trying to explain that. Do you Are you directly touched? If you are not directly touched, what is your reason for suing? But this is what is happening in other countries. In other countries, people could be able to drag the ministry to court to say that our moral values are going down. What is the ministry doing? What we need the Ministry of Secondary Education and Basic Education. This is the time that they must go back to the drawing board. They must go back to the drawing board because the thing is getting worse.
Okay, thank you, Senior Vice William, Principal of Somerset Bilingual College. I want to ask you this, Mr. Wendy Rudolph. What's the way forward? What's the way forward? We are surely out of time. What's the way forward?
I think the way forward, Mr. Jarvis, is that we need to let us try to change our mindset. It's true, because if at this level we keep on hammering only on the government, you discover that this aspect of moral decadence, it continues to increase and so on. I think it is time for us, all of us, to take our responsibilities. At the level of Somerset Bilingual College, it's not a government institution, it's a lay private institution. We do take up the challenge to maybe see how far we can preempt some of this aspect. Take, for example, the usage of phones. We do just constant control, make sure that the students don't come to school with their phones. If it happens that they come, we do our daily control and we seize these phones. If you come to my locker, I have a special locker only on phones. The phones are there, and you discover that parents even come to intervene, and I do refuse. As my colleague Riley said, the government text is still current on that, no usage of phones. But now the law is there, but you discover that there is some negligence in our own part, in the various schools. The government has stipulated it. Even this aspect of corporal punishment. If you are a teacher or a trained teacher, you are a role model. There are different aspects of punishing a child, not only that corporal. Let us not only insist on that aspect of beating. Barrister rightly said it. To a limited extent, you can do that. In my own institution, I see it clear. None of my discipline master has the right. If he goes to that extent of trashing, I myself, I take the child right inside my office. Now, beating up a child, if it is corrective, then it goes a long way to change that child. But you discover that if you follow the principle of cause and effect, as my brother rightly said, the government came up with this particular policy simply because those cases of that abuse of teachers using only the whip. You can imagine in those days, a teacher teaching in class is using with a cane. That's already an abuse, and it is totally out of place. Education cannot function that way, and that is why the government had to come in. So if the government had to come in, no,
It helped us.
It helped us. It helped me.
Madam Bill always
Is that
had a
right?
kid.
Not so. But even a head professor.
Madam Bill always had a kid.
Now we are saying that if we follow that principle of cause and effect, there was a lot of problems. A lot of problems came up because of that, and the government had to intervene because of it. So at least let us see how we can use other means in order now to.
Department of Corporate Punishment in school.
No, the discipline department is already there, is sufficient. They can take care of that. And then another magic solution. Yes, another magic solution again in the context of my own school, Somerset Bilingual College, is that we do liaise, we have partnership with some NGOs. And most of these NGOs are especially students from the University of Boya. We take advantage of them. They have their barrister who know. So they come and we give them that allowance to talk to the students as far as morals are concerned. You know, the students by age, they are closer to these university students. So at least they have that, you know, they will easily listen to them. Peer understanding, that is right. Thank you very much. So at least we should, it's already time for us to start improvising. Let us do something. Let's change that mindset. Let's not to talk on whether the salaries and so on. Because if we want to talk, it's needed. But if you want to talk about the government salaries, what about us?
Okay.
The lay private.
Thank you.
We'll do the job.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you, the principal, Winding, for Somerset Bilingual College. Briefly, before
Yes,
we go.
you know, I've always hold tight to the fact that we have a catalog of problems in Cameroon because wrong people are put to do almost everything. You see, when the wrong people are put to do almost everything, we get the type of result we are getting. So I'm thinking that it's time. Educators should be given their places as ministers in this country. Educators should be given their pride of place as delegate of basic education. Right down the water. Listen. We water it down to the lowest level, because when you see a minister who studied geography in one and did not even go to economy and ended up as a management and is given the post of Minister of Education, he has no direct bearing, no direct touch with what education is all about. So I think from there, you see somebody who did transport and logistics is given the post of minister. So I think we should start from there. That scale should be reorganized. Then if that place is given to them, then we go back to the former values that used to work. We can bring back moral education in our timetables in school. We bring back the imams, the pastors and the reverends. And then the teacher-parent relationship should be strengthened.
Okay, thank you very much. Professor Mark, briefly before we go.
I always have this problem. I believe that if the children are well educated at home, then they will make the best in schools. So it is necessary that the basic education that begins in our houses, which actually begins through synopsis, where children observe and learn, should be reinstituted, and parents should get to the place where they learn to sit at home and educate their children. I remember my father, even when he comes late from work, he used to come back, make sure he goes through my books, check them, find out why were you not in this class, why didn't they mark this particular course, all that. He used to do that. So we need to go back to making sure at home, let the parents play their part. Teachers are not magicians. They will not transform your children into what you want because you thought you send them to school. No. Teachers are doing their own job. And so there is need for the teacher-parent relationship to be re-established. And when that is re-established, the teacher should do his own part of the job in schooling the children. And as we rightly said, schooling a child is not all that is needed. There is need for educating that child as well. And education that we have in Cameroon is practically just for the head. We need a holistic educational system that is going to fit the entire man. When the entire man is educated, it becomes very, very easy for these children to come out of school and become better persons.
Thank you.
I am shocked today that ministers who went to Bali, they are out today actually making laws that are not favoring even schools. It's terrible.
Thank you, Prof. Next Sunday, look at.
How want me to talk?
No. That is not.
We have a set of leaders, elites, which I am shocked and surprised because their foundation was good. Their foundation was very powerful.
Next week Sunday,
something is wrong with
it.
them.
We will have a debate on should corporal punishment be instituted in a school. I think we'll talk about this. It will be the sole topic next week Sunday on corporal punishment, because a lot of messages are coming on corporal punishment.
No problem.
Corporal punishment.
Yes.
So we'll look at that we'll talk on that next week Sunday. Briefly before we go, your last word.
I would like to bring up another aspect that we left out during our talk. We understand that we are in Africa, and the family has played a great role in bringing up the society. You know, of recent there has been this upsurge in single parent homes, and this is one of the reasons that has contributed a lot to have children who misbehave in schools. We still need to go back to our drawing boards. I know they would not sound well with our modern religious leaders because they don't value it because the West has imposed on us this issue of monogamy. In polygamous homes in yesteryears, parents could go out looking for other means to survive while other parents sit back and take care. So I think we should go back in resetting the family. You know, this single parents issue has greatly contributed to this. And then another aspect is that if we actually feel pained with what we see in our children, we need to go back and retrain ourselves to be the good example that our children can mimic.
Okay. Barrister, thank you for coming.
Thank you very much, and I'm happy that this topic will go a long way to edify the stakeholders in the education milieu, and to see how we could have a better society, because if you don't have a strong base, you cannot be able to succeed. And like what Professor said, if you want to become a big minister, like those are ministers today, you must have a strong base. So we pray that this thing should go deep, and we pray that the morals, we want the morals of the yesteryears to come back. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bryce. I will get Prof. Principal, thank you for coming. And before, thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I think the topic has been a very sensitive one. It's a long one. As you rightly said, we need more time to really go through this because it's a burning issue. Let us not forget, we need this change, and we need to go back to the source. And this source is where these values come from. The Word of God, the family, and everything. Let us not forget.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, June, for coming.
Yes, thank you very much. Like he said, I corroborate his word. You know, Jesus Christ taught with examples, and he was the best teacher. So I think the word of God is the key. But we regret the fact that our viewers from Mayome Sala have not been able to watch us because of power cut. They are suffering to watch the world. Right?
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Kwan, for coming.
Thank you very much, Jarvis, for the opportunity. It's just a privilege. And I want to say that it's very important we do not forget this fact that what makes Africa is not the education that we have inculcated or we have copied from Europe. What makes Africa is the education that is at home. I still go back to the house. Okay. That's where it is.
Mr. Mayor NS, thank you for coming.
Thank you, Jarvis. We'll look forward in the coming days to better educate our public on how we can go about handling the situation of our children so that we can have the society we expect.
Of course, Senior Barrister Wule, most controversial in handling controversial issues. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, and these were the gentlemen we all had for today's edition of our program, House of Commons. Remember, next week we'll have a full debate on House of Commons. Should corporal punishment be instituted in our schools to beef up with the educational system, looking at the high level of moral decadence in our schools? A lot of you have sent messages that corporal punishment should be instituted. It's like a debate in my phone. The messages are too many, I cannot read it. But next week, Sunday, we'll have a full house. We'll have a house for and a house against, so that we really look at this and we leave the school or the stakeholders the choice or to make the decision whether they should institute corporal punishment or not. This program will be rebroadcast on this same day at exactly 10:30. We'll have a rebroadcast of this same program. 10:30 tomorrow we'll have a rebroadcast. I'm sure it should be about 10:30 or 10 o'clock like that. We'll have a rebroadcast tomorrow. You can follow this same program on our YouTube channel, BT Media. YouTube channel is BT Media Group. Go to YouTube, BT Media Group. You have the program on our YouTube channel. On our Facebook page, to those of you who are not watching on Facebook, it is My Media Prime on Facebook page. You can follow us on Twitter, which is at My Media Prime on Twitter. The links will be shared on our Twitter handle. And of course, you can follow me at Jarvis or My Media Prime. These are the issues we have discussed today. I leave you with this: no matter the matter, what matter is your matter. No matter the matter, what matter is your matter. And what should matter for you this day is that corporal punishment should be looked into for the future of Cameroon's education, wiping out cultural imperialism. My name is Salvage Jarvis from Cameroon's economic capital. Bye-bye, and stay tuned for more programs on My Media Prime.